Welcome to Politically Basic. I'm your host, Kyle Campbell. As we always do, we're breaking down the basics of all political issues and current political events so that you get to decide. I've got a serious warrior on my hands today, and well, I'm definitely okay with it because we get to talk all about the military, national defense, international conflicts, immigration, threats, clashes, security, and everything in between with Aaron Love. You may know him online as Aaron Loves America. He's an Ohio native and Air Force veteran who served 22 years, including 16 as a pararescueman. He deployed 5 times during the global war on terror to Iraq, Africa, and Afghanistan, holding leadership roles up to Squadron Operations Superintendent and Senior Enlisted Leader. After retiring in January 2024, Aaron transitioned to continued service through media and mentorship. He's a key contributor to the One's Ready podcast and the War Room, helping mentor the next generation of warriors while offering insight on military culture, leadership, and current events. Welcome, Aaron. I'm so glad you're on the show with me today.
Thanks so much, Kyle. I just want to start with appreciation. I am humbled by the chance to be here. I'm going to call it right now. I want this to be your best performing episode. I want to provide value, but I just want to start with gratitude. Thank you so much for the kind words and for bringing me on.
Well, I love that. Thank you, sir. You are aptly named. You're already giving and showing some love. So thank you. I know it's going to be a great episode because you have expertise and experience in so many of these issues that are really kind of exploding, not only globally right now, but within our own nation's borders as well. So there's a lot to get to today. I'm really happy to have you here and just to let me kind of fire away and ask you all the things. And I know that you're going to give us excellent answers. So thank you again. You're a military guy. You've served valiantly all over the world, but you love commentating and contributing now on current political affairs also. So tell us about that transition from service now to commentating.
Yeah, too easy. So I was just a young kid that was sort of lost and looking for a mission in Ohio. I was bouncing around doing silly jobs and didn't know what to do with my life. And then September 10th, I didn't know what my life would hold for me, but September 11th of 2001, that path was immediately clear. I went to the recruiter's office September 13th. I entered the delayed entry program, and I was in the Air Force less than 2 months later. I tried to be a pararescueman. Pararescuemen are the only DoD entity that are trained, equipped, employed, and deployed specifically for search and rescue. Colloquially, there's a joke going around that when SEALs get in trouble, when the world gets in trouble, they call the Navy SEALs. Well, when the Navy SEALs get in trouble, they call PJs.
Wow.
Well, it's a joke, and I'm sure my brothers in arms, the guys that wear this little maroon beret behind me, they're gonna laugh at me for saying the joke out loud, and I take that. That's accurate feedback. But it's a great job, and it's focused on bringing people home. I did it the absolute worst way possible. It took me 4 indoc selection teams, and then about 5 years, I failed the first 2 times. I had to come back and try it again, and luckily, I got to spend the last 16 of my years of career living that motto that others may live. Towards the end of my career, the military is downstream from culture. People don't understand this. It's actually very representative of American culture writ large. We have the same problems, concerns, issues that go on inside of the military, just on a smaller scale with a little bit of different rules. But I really got to a point in about 2019, and I kind of looked around and I said, I enlisted to get in and go fight in GWAT. I wanted to do a combat job, and people don't even know that the Air Force has combat jobs, which is why we started the podcast over at One's Ready, to let people know about the goodness that they could do, and that the Air Force actually has things other than planes. We actually have people that go on the ground and do amazing missions. I looked around at the military. I looked around at where I was living. I went through COVID in Tacoma, Washington. I was in the belly of the beast in Seattle during the worst parts of 2019 to 2024 is when I was there until I retired. And I just didn't recognize the world that I was living in, the conversations that we were having. There's an old axiom about combat-proven gentlemen, old men that live in a profession where men usually die young. It is my duty to these younger generations of folks to explain to them what that war was like, to explain to them what 20 years of a 3-theater war looked like. Because without those old salty people that are willing to share their successes, more importantly, their failures, their experiences, we're going to have a whole generation of people that don't know what accurate incoming gunfire sounds like. And unless I tell them and how to react and how to train, then I've done them a disservice. And the American population is no different. Yeah. Unless I tell these patriots, unless I give them a reason to care about where we're going culturally, politically, current events, all these other things, unless I use my voice and my platform for that good, I am doing a disservice. Citizenship is not passive. It is an active pursuit of the ideals, the golden apple inside of the silver frame of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and what we can be aspirationally as a nation, unless you guide people and teach people in that realm. And sometimes I do it from a very hyperbolic and a very adversarial online avatar, but it's to drive these conversations.
Amazing. Well, we need you. We need people just like you to share that with us. We're so soft now, right? What have we gone through? And unless you have experienced military, you have gone to some of the toughest places, you've been deployed, you've worked with the weaponry, you've trained. It sounds like these PJs, while it's tough to acquire that level, it produces one of the baddest warriors that this country's got. And so we're grateful to you that you're now sharing that experience and that knowledge, transferring that to others who haven't experienced that or who are at the beginning of their journey to do that. So I think that's fantastic. There's been such drastic change with regard to the military in general from this last presidential administration to the one that we're experiencing now. Even though Trump is back with us again, Biden was too in a way, right? He came up under Obama. A lot of changes to the military there, but really significant ones during the Biden administration the last 4 years. And here comes Trump again. And Pete Hegseth just absolutely got things turned on their head, it seems like, in a good way. Would you agree? And how have you seen the military morph and change and kind of roar back, if you will, over this last short year, really?
Boy, not too bad for a Fox News host, huh? Remember when everybody said that Pete Hegseth didn't have the chops to lead the entire military and he was just a Fox News host? Those people are eating just whole platefuls of crow. Yeah. To speak about different administrations, I served under, Bush, Bush 2, Obama for 8 years. I served under Trump for the first one, Biden, and then Trump again as I was getting out. There's going to be changes with every administration. Everybody has these different things that they want to get after. But I had a distinct feeling during the Biden administration that we just didn't know what we were doing. We were chasing things that didn't matter. And the whole move to, even the change from Department of Defense to Department of War, you do not understand in my circles how much that resonated. We are not here to defend things. One of my favorite quotes of all time is, there's two ways to protect the flock. You can build a better sheep pen and you can try to keep the wolf out, or you can go hunt wolves. The military, especially the special operations community, we kind of forgot during GWOT how special operations is supposed to be used. It's not meant for protracted ground operations. And when you have that feeling of GWOT with no desired end state, no clear task and purpose, and no clear rules of engagement, most of which restricted us as opposed to let us do it, when you contrast that with Operation Absolute Resolve, where we showed exactly what the special operations community can do, and I'm talking cyber, intel, to the air crew, to the people supporting it, to the 20 gentlemen from CAG, the Combat Applications Group, colloquially known as Delta Force, when those men went on the ground, that is American dynamism. That is American power. It provides deterrence. It provides peace through strength. The move towards physical fitness and combat lethality, and we're going to stop caring about these things that don't matter, and we're going to get people on the range and shooting and practicing their primary skill sets, and we're going to focus on the things that matter. I can rail on probably longer with some of the Trump picks in the cabinet. There are some people that I have some harsh words for. Pete Hegseth is not one. I'm an outputs guy. I was willing to wait for Pete to see exactly how he was going to lead. He's crushing it. He gets an A+ for me, 10 out of 10, absolutely 0 notes.
Amazing. Well, that's so good to hear because we appreciate your insider take on that. He's gotten some good, healthy amounts of criticism, but what I will say, we get a lot of comments on content that we put out there, good, bad, and everything in between. And I always read them because I think that is, in a sense, kind of farming the temperature of where the American public is at with different things. You mentioned Operation Absolute Resolve. Even though some people tried to make a case that, you can't just go into other countries and snatch leaders, and that's absolutely not what happened. But no one was complaining about the precision and the force and the intellect and the skill level of those U.S. military departments involved in that. I think collectively we were impressed and we were proud. that's our military going in there and doing something so cutting edge, so high tech, and so impressive. But it's good to hear from somebody who has been boots on the ground and who's got that inside viewpoint. There is certainly a lot to commentate on these days. While the administration is busy trying to negotiate conflicts, I won't say necessarily resolve, because some are still ongoing, but certainly negotiate. Some have come to an end.
Sure.
They might crop up again. You never know. And many are just in process. Here at home, we are seeing unprecedented levels of attacks against law enforcement, against federal law enforcement, against those who are tasked and trained to keep us safe. Do you think there is a dividing line here between law enforcement and military? I mean, let me put it this way. I'm going to put something a little different in front of you and get your take on it. Are there illegal immigrants trying to join the military?
That'd be interesting. I think that there probably are. I can't say no, right? Like you hate to speak in absolute. I never speak in absolutes, right? I think that there probably are. I think we have plenty, a couple of law enforcement folks. I'm blanking on the line. They were found to be an illegal immigrant with illegal documents. And I think that there is a push. The military is sort of the last bastion of meritocracy. Only 23% of the American population actually qualified to go into the military for a number of different reasons, mostly medical. The rise of mental health diagnosis and SSRIs and stuff. That stuff is almost immediately disqualifying from the military, right? So there's only a 23% pool. When you look at what seems to be the overarching play here, the illegal immigration problem is in the census. It's not in just the resources they're taking away or the crime that's purveyed by these certain groups of people. Those people are counted on the census. If you remember the 1986 Amnesty Act from Ronald Reagan, he gave a blanket amnesty to 3 million people. It forever changed the Republican stronghold of California into a Democrat stronghold forever. The influence on our system, the influence on the political landscape that we have, the military is sort of the last bastion of that. There aren't a whole lot of woke folks inside the military because you can't be a pacifist and also be on deployment orders. Those folks are sort of weeded out, right? Now, the military is extremely diverse. It takes all viewpoints, and you're left to work on your own devices, and you get to keep what you kill in essence. It still is a meritocracy. But to not take that one extra step, to not look at what seems to be the overarching plan here. We want to flood illegal immigrants into places that will vote for us, and then we can solidify power, and then we have that essentially imported voter base from 10 million to 20 million, depending on how many, like what estimate you're using for how many illegal immigrants came here between 2020 and 2024. To think that the military isn't a target for this sort of collectivism, I think that you're either being purposely obtuse or you're just not smart enough to have the conversation.
Well, I don't hear anybody having the conversation, which is why I put it in front of you. We're just siphoning off law enforcement right now as they are the ones having to kind of deal with this problem. But there are a lot of different facets to it, right? If we had a draft, if there's a reason that, you have some people without their citizenship here trying to get into positions of leadership or power that gives them cover. And it's pretty remarkable when they get uncovered. But I think what it comes down to is just we're really confused right now. There's a lot of confusion. Well, I'm not confused and you're not confused. When I say we're confused, some people are confused. Let me clarify.
The royal we. Yes, not you and I, but the royal we.
Yes. That there is a confusion over who has the right to be protected and kept safe and what we will accept in terms of criminal behavior and how we will place that on the priority list. And the military is just an interesting facet of that. We're inching closer to a situation here where National Guard is going to be deployed, State Guard will be federalized. We're getting there. We're getting to a 1992 LA Rodney King situation. It's boiling, and it's got to come to some head because lines keep getting crossed, and then nothing is really getting resolved there. What's your thought on where this is headed and what it's going to take to kind of regain sort of control over a rationally operating lawful society in some of these cities like Minneapolis or LA?
Unfortunately, and I really do hate saying this, to kind of lay this out plainly, I'm as close to a military non-interventionalist as you can possibly get. Now, I will say that some dogs are just bad, and sometimes you just need to put the dog down. On the world stage, America needs to engage in those things, but I have such a high bar because I lived my life and I have friends that are no longer here by these war hawks saying we have to go and put boots on ground in Iraq and Afghanistan and Yemen and in Kenya and all these other places that we are in order to get after these higher minded things. Like I'm the person that personally paid a penalty for all those things. So when you start talking to me about what should the military do, people would think that I'm just, all gung ho, let's go blow everything up, let's kill everybody. Absolutely not. It's actually the complete opposite. I hold that same standard here at home. There are specific titles in which the National Guard can engage outside of Title 10 and Title 32 in order to support national level events. When you talk about law and order inside of the United States, a little facet of this that people don't accurately internalize, I suppose, is they view everything in a silo. People approach you and they say, well, how do you feel about the National Guard going into the streets? And you go, hold on, can we back up and zoom out 8 months? How did you feel about a sanctuary state that said that they will openly defy the federal supremacy, which is clearly elucidated inside of the Articles of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, as a matter of fact? How do you square that circle that you forced us into this position and there is no other option? People like to talk about the Insurrection Act. I think the Insurrection Act, to be quite fair with you, probably should have been enacted in the BLM riots that caused over $2 billion in damage, killed 14 people, and decimated the social fabric of this country. I feel the same way about Minneapolis, and I do that with the very real understanding of the constitutional implications and precedent that sets. But you have to zoom out and look at it, and you can't just say, oh, well, the Guard should never go in there. Okay, well, how about when conservatives, which is as of this day, conservatives right now are being yanked out of their cars for the crime of looking conservative. And sometimes these rioters, this mob of armed individuals standing with long guns on corners saying they're protecting their people, which is weird because they're Americans. So you're protecting Americans. That seems a little bit odd that you would try to say that you're going to kill an ICE agent in order to protect Americans, because those two things are mutually exclusive and cannot exist in the same space. I'm very hesitant with that, but when I zoom out and I look at the real impacts, the real Americans that are being killed, from Lake and Riley to people on highways that are being killed by these immigrants that did not come in here directly. Something I want to clarify, every single immigrant that did not go to a point of entry, that did not engage in the correct process, is in violation of USC 8. Section 1325, and is a criminal. Now, you can try to back me down and say what level of criminality that is. But when people are like, oh, well, this admin said they were going after the illegals, they are. Those people are here illegally. And if we get to the baseline of the law, which, by the way, has predated this entire thing, and Obama used it to his credit in 2016, deporting 3.5 million people. In 2016, CNN did a ride along with ICE as they geared up in TAC gear to go door to door. The only difference is that now Trump is the captain of a mutinous ship. Now we have along party lines, Washington, Oregon, Portland, Virginia, Minneapolis, all of these, coastal elite states, New York, saying that they're going to openly defy the federalism, the federal powers of their intended thing at the behest of the American people that are their constituents. That's the remarkable difference between Obama and ICE in 2016, where CNN glowingly followed him along, championing him as a bringer of truth and a bringer of law and order. He even gave Tom Homan a medal recognizing him for his good work. And now suddenly Tom Homan is a Nazi for doing the exact same job at exponentially less deportations, which I don't know how that math works out. But when we talk about sending the military into these places, I say it with tears in my eyes and pain in my heart that it's a shame that you forced us to where we had to put the military in to do what those governors and mayors won't do.
No, it's awful. It's making a huge leap to the end point and criticizing the means without looking at the justification, without backing up and looking at everything else. It's a real sickness that's infected certain people in this country, where they view Tom Homan as a completely different person today versus under Obama. Somehow that's Trump's fault, by the
Somehow
way.
everything's Trump's fault.
And you know that what Trump is doing to a lesser degree is worse than what every other president pretty much before him did. It's really incredible. And that's why, again, like, people who are doing what you're doing, trying to educate, trying to correct the narrative, you're bringing facts, you're bringing receipts. What we try to do here on Politically Basic with Educate, like, hey, these are the basics of what happened. Just have the information so that you can make an informed, reasonable conclusion from that is really important. But that's the hard way, Aaron. It takes reading and listening and time and attention to.
And you have to be willing to be wrong.
Well,
I have to be willing to look at a situation, take in the facts that are presented to me and go, okay, this call was wrong. But that has to be your new position. I will say that opposition is not a position. Typically, if we're going to put this in the binary of left and right, the left doesn't have a position. There is no position that they absolutely won't abandon for their own political good. There is no tragedy that they will not capitalize on because all they have is opposition. Ilhan Omar recently tweeted out, and it's breaking now in a big way, but she tweeted out a completely fabricated story about how ICE detained a 5-year-old. Well, it turns out no. They detained the parents that were illegal in a traffic stop, and those parents abandoned that child, and ICE took that poor child into custody to protect her. So when you look at this disconnect of truth and this unwillingness, people aren't ready to have the conversation about Venezuela because they have no idea what the Monroe Doctrine is. People aren't willing to have this conversation about illegal immigrants because they say, I can't call them illegal when they've clearly violated established, vetted, voted upon USC and in federal law. And until you get there, it's a problem with even agreeing to terms. When you engage in a debate with somebody, you have to agree to terms, not only, hey, I'm going to talk, you're going to get a rebuttal, then I'm going to get a rebuttal to your rebuttal, and then we're going to move on. Those are terms. But we don't even agree on the meaning of words at this point. And it's so easy to talk past one another. Oh, you can't call them illegal immigrants. No, that's a factual observation, and I can show you the the chapter and verse of what they violated. You just want to try to move the goalpost, or the logical fallacy of no true Scotsman, and you want to try to walk me into a position where you say, oh, well, it's not that bad of a crime. We should just wait until they commit another crime, and then we'll pick them up. Well, Laken Riley's mother would disagree with you because the next crime that gentleman committed was the absolute savagery and the taking of an American life.
Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on the Insurrection Act, but I was reading about it the other day and about the elements that you need to put it into place. And one of those elements was kind of a lack of local law enforcement's ability or decision to go in and aid in a situation, which is essentially what we're seeing really happen in Minneapolis, is that their police department is still ravaged from 2020. It never built back. I mean, they essentially had it burned down and they abandoned the building. Many people quit. They took early retirement, and they're very depleted in personnel to this day. And when you see, the incident involving Renee Good, who was shot as she was ramming her vehicle into the ICE agent, who then went on to have internal bleeding and now apparently is in hiding because people are calling for his head. And you have these situations where we are seeing, camera footage. There's so many ways that this is being captured on video, which is very helpful, actually. There are no police officers anywhere around. Am I right in my interpretation of this, that in pushing back against ICE activities and leaving them abandoned in terms of local law enforcement, that these communities are actually making themselves ripe for the picking to bring the Insurrection Act into the mix?
You're totally correct. So the federal government really, per the Constitution, the federal government really has only 3 separate responsibilities, and it's protect the borders, engage in international trade, and then provide for the states, which they can't do for themselves. That's when the federal government is supposed to step in. When you add the little confounding piece of this, that mayors and governors of this city are saying that their police force, which, by the way, have been just absolutely decimated in training, the defund the police movement, stop the necessary training for these folks. And again, it's mutually exclusive positions for this whole thing. You say you want to defund the police, but you also want them to be able in a life-threatening situation to shoot people in the leg. Well, they can't do that unless they go to the range a whole bunch, and you took away the training to go to the range. So what are we talking about? You want them to be able to de-escalate in life or death situations. By the way, Jonathan Ross was hit and dragged 300 feet
Yeah.
and seriously injured 6 months prior to this. He knows what it's like when somebody who is in the process of committing several felonies decides to try to kill them with his car. So I understand that in a split second, and we've broken this down frame by frame and talked about it from whatever. He didn't have frame by frame. He had 1.25 seconds to decide if he was going home to his family or not. And for that, he was labeled a Nazi and a white supremacist and all this. So when you look at the Insurrection Act and you look at the inability of the states to protect its citizenry, that is exactly where the federal government is supposed to provide a function that the states cannot or will not provide for themselves. It is completely justified. Now, the Insurrection Act has a ton of bad things attached to it. And listen, like if you zoom out far enough, everything is wrong and everything is bad. I've got it. But if you take it in the context and the nuance of the facts of the matter on the ground right now, what is happening in Minnesota is 100% a collectivist insurrection. There is no other way to put it. The guys that storm churches are never the good guys in history.
Well, they're getting arrested now, thankfully, and unfortunately,
Thank goodness, Pam Bondi, finally.
Well, yeah, she's trying to do something. Apparently, there is someone there on the ground. What is the name? It was kind of one of those archaic.
Mark Kelly.
No, he has a title. He was supposed to go, serve the arrest warrant on Don Lemon and refused to do so. Sergeant at Arms, that's who it was. He stood down and refused to arrest Don Lemon. I mean, does anything surprise us in that community? You had their Attorney General Keith Ellison saying that they weren't breaking any laws as it related to the First Amendment when they absolutely were. He seemed to not only have a misunderstanding of our constitutional amendments, but to have been read in on this operation to go into this church beforehand and was on Don Lemon's podcast. Good Lord, why does Don Lemon need a podcast? And as we're two podcasters are sitting here discussing this, but provide zero value to the American public and entertainment. And for a sitting attorney general to know that was going to happen and to be just a participant in law breaking and watching the harassment and trespassing on church property, the whole thing is just almost hard to wrap your brain around that this happened. And now it continues, right? So you have an administration and a Department of Justice that is trying to do the right thing and follow up on this, and they're just going to get this obstruction moment after moment. And that's one piece of this puzzle. But let me ask you about this other piece that seems to be a growing problem. And that is the mentality of these protesters that somehow have gotten it into their heads. And you can call it mental illness. I'm sure there are those pathology components to it. I'm not going to psychoanalyze anybody here, but they don't seem thoroughly well. That they have decided that they're going to try to martyr themselves. That this is some kind of a way to get out their aggression, to become some sort of hero. And the other piece of it that I think is fanning the flames is that there is big money in this. So we see somebody, Renee Good, unfortunately, she put herself in a position of being shot. She died. And all of this GoFundMe money comes flooding in. They're making these people who are left behind millionaires. There was another family who claimed that their child was pepper sprayed,
tear gassed in a car.
Tear gassed, and no, it turns out,
and then your child in the car, and then you went and protested.
Completely negligent parenting, but they so quickly twisted that narrative to take advantage. They had raised upwards of $200,000 by the time that got figured out, and so now we have a new grift, right? We have a new scam, and that is be an internet sensation, martyr yourself, try to get money from people. And it's at law enforcement's expense. And now people are dying, and it does not seem to sink in with these other people that human lives are being lost at the expense of this kind of, sick and outrageous activity. What do you do here? I mean, does the Insurrection Act quash this? Or when your mayor won't step in, when local PD stands down, when your governor is Tim Walz, God help them.
That guy was almost vice president. That guy oversaw the biggest fraud in American history, and he was the number one pick for vice president.
We thought Kamala was the problem.
Oh
And
my,
he
it's
was
all of
just
them.
wacky.
It's all of them. So, there's a handy logical tool that I use. It's called Hanlon's razor. It's much like Occam's razor, but Hanlon's razor states that you always assume incompetence before malpractice. The problem that I see with these folks is that they're LARPing. They have been indoctrinated by a complicit mainstream news media complex and all of the talking heads that influence on the left to believe that they are going to be able to do whatever it is that they want. They can protest wherever they want. They can do whatever they want. They can take these actions and they will not be held accountable for it because they are, quote, social justice warriors, unquote. You can see it in the face of every person that they yank out of a car as they're asked for their ID and they start panicking and they're like, listen, I just thought this was a thing. There are paid agitators. Mark Kelly was a paid agitator. Will Kelly, I'm sorry, that was just arrested today.
Yes.
He was a paid agitator nationwide to go do these things. He's on video in D.C. berating National Guard members for literally just walking around. I think that what you're seeing is a symptom of the overall disease, which is a complete perversion of the victim, victor, oppressor sort of dynamic, where if they constantly find a way to feel oppressed, there is nothing that they can do wrong to the oppressor. And they've taken this to the extreme degree that we see in Minneapolis, now in the BLM riots, is that when accountability comes knocking at their door, they're completely, the quote from Renee Good's girlfriend that was not her wife. They called each other wife. They were not legally married. The quote was, "Why didn't you shoot her why did you have real bullets in that gun?" She said that in the moment. Why did that? If there is a quote that can encapsulate this entire thing, how these people have been indoctrinated. When you see Joy Reid go out on a podcast and say, we are 100% enraging these white liberal women because they'll shoot black people in the streets if they try it, so we're going to martyr them. They don't even know that they're going to be martyrs. They don't have a fully conceptualized plan or risk assessment of what could possibly happen to them when they engage in these scenarios. And unfortunately, and I say this with all transparency and humility, it hurts my heart that Renee Good died. It hurts my heart that, and unless you know this feeling, unless you have to be put into a decision where you are going to every day make a decision where you live or die and then someone else lives or dies, Jonathan Ross was put in an impossible position. And Renee Good lost her life over it. Yeah. I can't say how much, just from, if you just zoom out and take the emotion out of it, an American citizen died. And we have some things that led up to that. There was a long chain of her leaving her home state of Colorado and ending up in Minneapolis and being paid to do so and having training from an organization that received money from an NGO. This is why people resisted Elon Musk and Doge so much. Can you imagine how much worse these riots would be if USAID was still funneling money to these dark money NGOs and Alex Soros was able to give millions to these people to organize more protests?
Well, what's really concerning is that she was, quote unquote, professionally trained to go do this. And then there was shock when there were real bullets in the gun. So if you take those steps back of who is culpable, who is responsible here, right? That is the concern to me, is there is some operation training people but not equipping them. They're promoting unlawful behavior that is ending up with somebody losing their life.
They're weaponizing Trump derangement syndrome.
Where is the accountability for them? Where is the DOJ investigating that? It's unconscionable and disturbing. You say it hurts your heart. It's sickening, actually, to think that people would have such low regard for others' lives in general, that they would send someone out away from their children, states over, to go so far in agitating law enforcement that someone would be shot and die.
Yeah, it's tragic. And when you weaponize mental illness, when you weaponize Trump derangement syndrome, when you talk to the people and you say, hey, you know what? We're not actually, killing Nazis is a good thing, right? The Nazi Socialist Party that existed in 1932 to 1945 until we decimated it and we freed the world from their despotic rule. When you label somebody a Nazi today, you're not doing it because they're actually a Nazi. You want to justify that now you're, as the oppressed, as the people fighting Nazis, you're allowed to do whatever it is that you want to those people. We saw it with Charlie Kirk. We saw it with Tom Homan. We've seen it with everybody. I make a joke on the internet that it only takes about 3 messages before somebody calls me an ist or a phobe. But it's so good that those words have been overused to the point where they mean nothing to me. Absolutely nothing.
And, if you scale out and we look at what's happening on the world stage, it's embarrassing that people are acting this way on the greatest nation on earth with all of these rights and freedoms and privileges and benefits. We live a great life. Even the worst of us has it much better than people who are suffering across the country or across the world. And you've seen that. I mean, you've seen that firsthand. You went to some places with, war-torn countries and extreme poverty, oppression, true oppression, not what we get called as oppressors here. So I would like to, scale back and just kind of take a look at some of those conflicts and get your thoughts on where we're headed with some things that we've had participation in. It does seem like while things have calmed down with the, Israel-Hamas conflict, that it's not completely settled. We've turned our attention to Iran and the people's fight for freedom there. Again, kind of paused, kind of quieted down. I'd really like your take, Aaron, on what's happening in the nation of Iran, because I guess personally I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. I'm here in Southern California. LA's got one of the largest Iranian Persian populations. They're wonderful people. They're hardworking. They've come over years ago and assimilated and love America and done immigration the way you're supposed to do it. And this hurts us, not just because we know and are friends with so many of those people, but because we have watched Iran, once be a great country and a great ally of the United States with a thriving population, just completely be squashed down to the most oppressed, hyperinflation, really sexist in the worst possible ways, treating women horribly, treating citizens horribly, complete removal of any guns and weapons that they are allowed to own, yet the military and the guard have them. And now this protest, they've had enough and they're just being shot in the street. So where do you think things are going there? Do you think there's going to be some resolution, or will things just calm down and continue on business as usual?
So people forget that less than one generation ago, 50 years ago, Iran was a bustling democracy that you could look and you could not tell the difference between Iran and Miami and Los Angeles. And then the theocratic regime took over that country and just took it into abject poverty and terror for most of its citizens. I will say that you have to let the people lead. I have 20 years of experience with regime change and counterinsurgency operations. I'd like to tell you that it doesn't work. Nobody has ever won a counterinsurgency sort of campaign. It actually has killed more empires than anything else, is engaging in these long, protracted wars. You have to let the people lead. We also have to accept that the people may want to lead in a way that we do not agree with. I think Trump at one of the World Economic Forums, I think last year, he said directly, we don't want you to be America light. We don't want you don't have to look like us. You can lead with your own culture, your own values, your own morals. But it has to be a net positive for the region in which you live and for the world generally. Iran, point blank, is a state-sponsored terrorism factory. That is what they do, from Hezbollah to the other forces that they allow to operate in, their alignment with the Quds forces and some of these other malactors inside of the Middle East. They provide massive instability to the entire region. So when you see the people uprising, and 13,000 protesters have been killed by some estimates by that regime now, they completely turned off their internet. It's hard to get a sense of anything that's going on inside of Iran. I want nothing more for the people of Iran to take their country back and lead in a way that is beneficial to the world. When you allow those things that you're talking about, when you allow women to have the same personal agency online with everybody else in the country, which personal agency, by the way, is one of the underpinnings of independent rights and freedoms that we enjoy here, you bring the entire floor of that country up. You increase everybody's wealth, education. You take people out of poverty. But if you have a regime that is in there that is not allowing that is systematically keeping you away from those ideals and from those aspirational goals, that regime has to go. I don't think we necessarily need to engage in regime change, because there are some people out there that are calling for open regime change. I'm saying it doesn't work. For some limited strikes, maybe we use some of that American air power. There are carrier groups that are positioned off the coast of Iran right now. Trump, in his classic way, got everybody all spun up about Greenland for 2 weeks. And during those 2 weeks, you know what we were doing? we were putting the finest military technology within reach out and touch you distance of Iran. That deterrence is a really, really good thing for those people of Iran. I hope that they take their country back. I hope that we don't put boots on the ground there to engage in some sort of long, protracted regime change, because I just don't agree with it. I don't think it works. But it's my hope for the people of Iran that they rise up and take the country back and make it their own the same way that we did in the late 1700s.
So beautifully said. I agree, absolutely. Same question with regard to Cuba. What do you think now that Venezuela has been disabled in a sense and
completely
kind of
fenestrated. Completely.
It's just what a remarkable operation and an absolute must do for the people of Venezuela to go and get Maduro and Cilia Flores out of there. But now people are starting to ask questions about Cuba.
I love Cuba.
It's funny how these countries kind of come back on our mental radar every now and again, but I think it's a good one to talk about. They've sort of been a little quiet, but brewing, I would say, over the last several years. What do you think's in the future there as it relates to the United States?
So people forget about this, and another guy that has just been absolutely destroying it. My top three in the new Trump admin, I've got Pete Hegseth, I've got Bobby Kennedy in the Maha movement. He's doing amazing things, exactly what I voted him in to do. But a third, and people forget about this, is Marco Rubio. Marco Rubio is Cuban. If you don't think that there is part of his heartstrings that are looking at Venezuela and going, what if we just gave the people of Cuba the opportunity? What if we just gave the people of Cuba, what if we told you you no longer have to take a raft at risk of you and your family's life to get to something better? What if we gave you the conditions that you needed in order to make Cuba exactly what it was in the 1950s? The Godfather's movie, where did they all go to party, everybody? They went to Cuba because it's a gorgeous island destination that is 90 miles away from Florida, folks. You can leave Key West on a boat, drive south, and hit Cuba. It's great. So if you don't think Marco Rubio has that on his thing, if you don't think he's in Trump's ear, be like, hey, if Venezuela took us less than an episode of Game of Thrones, we could probably do Cuba in about an Office episode. Yeah. So just saying. So, but I think, and it ties into the Monroe Doctrine, and we don't allow communists, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Why? Because we had communists, specifically Russians, that wanted to put missiles that could reach out and touch us, just like Venezuela. It fits well inside of the diplomatic inroads that we want to make. If they're a partner that we could expand with and support, and we could free the people of that country from their communist collectivist rule that they've lived under, it's a net positive. The only pushback that I would have to that is I don't know where the American appetite is for yet another conquest. Now, I will say, if we do it like Iran, we go in, we break your stuff, we leave, we go into Venezuela, we put our feet up on your couch. We kill all of your Cuban bodyguards, and we take your president, and we allow the people to rise up. In that sort of narrow context, people might be like, well, I don't know. I would like to vacation in Cuba. It's pretty nice, but they're stuck in a time warp of really 1950 when it took over, and they could never get out of it. So if you think Marco Rubio doesn't have that on a little whiteboard in his office, and he kind of points at it with the president, like, hey, I don't know, Cuba's pretty close. We wouldn't even, you could just take off from Florida. You wouldn't even need to really air refuel a whole lot. We could just go kind of do this. It's in our backyard. I mean, I don't know what to tell you if you think Marco Rubio doesn't have his eyes on freeing his home country.
He absolutely does. And Marco Rubio is phenomenal. I hope that he has a long future in political leadership that only gets more and more important. I hope his office space continues to enlarge as he goes along here. I think there's a messaging element to all of this. You mentioned the word kind of conquest. We're going to go conquer versus liberate. And I think that once the American public understands what really happened in Venezuela, I mean, every Venezuelan said it. We just have some people within our own borders who are a little thick in understanding that this was a good thing. It minimized loss of life. We didn't get dragged into a war. This was truly liberating a once great nation that has been brought to its knees. And he
I
seems
just,
to,
I don't, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought,
yeah.
but there is nothing that gives my petty heart more happiness than watching some liberal white chick that's 25 years old in Pacific Beach talk about how bad it is we went in Venezuela, and then watching her just get ratioed and bodied
Yeah.
in the comments by
Yeah.
actual Venezuelans. Like, what are you talking? We were
Yeah.
eating dogs. What are you talking about?
I know.
Hilarious.
I know. We sometimes make bad life choices about how our commentary is going to be received.
Yeah.
No, no,
Uh,
no, and it's true. Like we this is why what's happening in places like New York with a socialist mayor coming in, and it's so many warnings from people who have lived it and survived it. People just aren't hearing it. They're like, well, we'll do it right here in America. Don't worry. You guys have tried it. You know, you've tried socialism and communism in other countries and it didn't go great, but we're going to get it right. And it's really hard to listen to. And they're going to have to learn the hard way. But, you know, we've been hearing more and more this terminology about the Western Hemisphere. And Trump and his team, this outstanding, really brilliant strategic team, is starting to wrap their hands around our Western Hemisphere and take it back. And I think that this is a good thing, and for people to understand, look, you know, yes, America can be the savior of the world. Not everybody's on board with that. But at the least, we've got to make sure that there are neighboring nations are not being harmed while we're being harmed also. So it's a win-win in a lot of ways. I would like to see him address Cuba. Greenland seems already sorted out. We took care of Venezuela. There are other countries to go. Take a crack at Canada. Mark Carney's pissing everybody off and chasing around after Xi. And, you know.
I'll take Alberta right now. Alberta
They're ready.
Is so based. They're so based. If
They've
you ask
had it.
anybody in Alberta, be like, want to be part of America? They'll be like, yep, I do. And I'll tell you what,
they're ready.
all my Canadians up to the north, I know that I got some problems, but it's basically Quebec and Toronto. Alberta, open arms. Come on in, baby.
People don't realize that Canada, it's so vast, but it is set up politically very similar to the United States. Actually, if you look at the map, you know, the whole middle is pretty conservative, pretty centered. And then it's those edges that have really lost it. So I don't know, maybe it's something in the seawater. Who knows? Well, I love your take. This is so fascinating to hear from you. Aaron, do you think, bringing it back home, do you think the national security elements that the administration has more control over, closing a border, right? We have zero legal border crossings.
Since last January.
Yeah, brilliant. Right away.
The quote about we didn't need any new laws, we just needed a new administration, that has been proven right time and time again.
We knew this.
we just had a 30% reduction in fentanyl deaths nationwide.
Yeah.
30% reduction in overdoses. There was an ER doc, I saw a great reel, and he was talking about, we used to see 8 to 10 overdoses a night. He's like, we'll go 3 days without seeing one now. We have maybe one or maybe two. If you cannot put aside your personal differences and say, hold on, you're telling me we had a 30% reduction in fentanyl deaths because we simply adhered to our own borders and Mayorkas wasn't just flaunting and basically completely undermining everything that we have for border security? Get out of here.
Yeah.
What are we talking about?
Yeah. No, it's so true. That got shut down immediately, and we knew it could be done. I mean, we were talking about this back in 2024, the election year, saying just do something. And Biden would shuffle out and say, well, I need Congress. Trump is telling Congress not to do. It was absurd. Nope. It was so unconstitutional. But, you know, the auto pen might not have been working that month. So
it was working a lot.
It burned out. It was smoking. But so there are elements that, you know, an administration or a DOD or a Department of War or, you know, national intelligence, say, or a Tom Homan and ICE and Border Patrol has more control over. And then there are things that we are dealing with, like these deportations that have been hindered and obstructed and are more difficult, and that causes other issues here within our borders, which is that there are sleeper cells that have been, you know, these groups of people just flooded in. Some were from China, many from South America, from Mexico, of course, some from Africa. And it was these trails of just single men coming in and not families or people actually seeking asylum or needing to be in for anything other than potentially really nefarious purposes. Now, we had some New Year's Eve LA threat that was dismantled and found out, thank God, some domestic terrorist plot that got found out. What do you think is our risk level with the people who are still in the United States who shouldn't be here and want to carry out plans like that? There was another one who was that the same one, or he had been in communication with ISIS and he was going to provide bomb making materials to carry out an attack on U.S. soil. What's our level here of danger of having domestic terrorist attacks from within the borders from these people who came in during the Biden administration?
Well, I hate to fear monger. I tell everybody to be vigilant. I think it's always a threat. It's been a threat, both with homegrown domestic terrorism and foreign influence. I think that when you allow 10 to 20 million people inside of here, there are going to be some portion of that. If you even take on the low end 10 million people, you take 10% of that, or maybe, people that are really, bad people and probably shouldn't be here. So now we're down to 100,000. You take another, even 1% of that, you're talking about, 1,000 to 10,000 people that are really here to do coordinated harm on a large scale. Like, I don't think that risk can be underplayed in any way. So I always advise that people stay vigilant. There are enemies of America that saw a vulnerability, and smart enemies take advantage of those vulnerabilities. That's just a tactical truism. I think that's why it's another part of this immigration is vetting. Is finding these people that should not be here. And, great point about looking at these videos at the border and seeing people that are from every walk of life, and it's all military fighting age males. 17 to 35-year-old males with no children seeking asylum. The fact that we just sort of glossed over that and painted it with this brush of people just looking for a better life, I think that that's just willingly obtuse to the realities of the moment. We sort of sped past this, but New Year's Eve 2 years ago, there was the Cybertruck bombing that happened here in Vegas, but at the same time in New Orleans, a radicalized ISIS operative that was a former Army, I think an Army Intel guy, an Army Intel captain, flew an ISIS flag and murdered people in New Orleans before one of the football games and actually caused a delay to that football game. So the threat is always there. But what I would caution against is the fear mongering that the natural outcome of that is, it's going to happen all the time and I can't live my life. I can't go do these things. So, what do I think the threat is? I think the threat is ever present. I think depending on where it is that you live and how it is that we handle this immigration crisis going forward, I will say that the way that we're handling immigration now and the way that we're handling law enforcement now, the fact that we're finding these, we went through an entire 4-year period where magically the FBI didn't foil one plot. And every time something happened, it was the same line. Well, they were on our radar. Okay, guys. Well, if they're on our radar, we can shoot them, right? We, if we're using the air send, if they're on your radar, you can bring them in for questioning. Can you not
do something?
Do you have to wait until they do something, or can we bring them in? You were able to find every single January 6th protester by a picture of their earlobe 6 months later, and you're telling me this guy that made open threats on Facebook, which is what that New Orleans shooter did, you're telling me we couldn't involve ourselves in that process? That doesn't seem to make much sense. So my bottom line here, I think it's always something you should have in the back of your mind. Always be careful about taking your family to large groups, especially large groups of stuff. There was some very interesting reporting. People have figured out that you can use Google to search terms, and we've correlated those to where there are some terms that pop up before an event, which is very interesting. You should go look at that. But Disneyland attack has popped up, theme park attack has popped up. I think if you just fold that into your everyday life and you take the proper precautions, what I don't want to tell you to do is I don't want you to stop living as an American because the threat exists.
Yeah. Wow. Really, really well said. Aaron, your handle on socials is Aaron Loves America.
It is. Yeah,
some people in this country who, as I said, take all the bennies, all the freedom to protest and yell and scream and burn an American flag, which you want to talk about things that hurt my heart. I'm sure you don't enjoy seeing that either. They scream and shout. They hate this country so much. They won't leave.
Right. I was going to say it earlier. We're the only country that is so oppressive that people refuse to leave it.
Or they pop out and then they pop back. I guess we might be getting Ellen DeGeneres back.
You can have her. I don't need it.
No, she lives in my community. It's been so lovely without her. We have other better people. But
sure.
Your handle's Aaron Loves America, and I would love to hear you're so well spoken. Why do you love America?
Because it's everything that humanity is meant to be. I refuse to be blackpilled. I refuse to let go of hope. I refuse to let go of hope for every single American citizen, regardless of their political bent, regardless of how they feel about this country. I resist it because that golden apple inside of the silver frame, those aspirational goals that the founding fathers were pretty smart on, and they keep getting proven right every single day. That has led to the most benevolent, most free, most diverse, best thing for this world it's ever seen. We're coming up on our 250th anniversary. Again, at the risk of my friends cringing at me when I say this, I fought for that country. I wore that flag. I love this country. I refuse to let the country go in a way that is anathema to where it is that we're supposed to go. There's an old allegory about war horses. And when you used to put war horses out to pasture, when they heard the war drums, they would literally kill themselves. They would literally run into the fence trying to get to those war drums. I wish that I was a person that could stop responding to the war drums. I wish I was that horse that could just live inside of his pen, safe, and let the younger horses go out. I simply can't. I joined this country to fight for it. I did it because I love the people in it. I love what we can be with all of our scars and all of our problems behind us. Even then, we are still the world leader. We are the light on the hill to give people the hope. Why do these people go through 7 different countries, risk their lives, their families' lives, pay money to coyotes just to get here? It's because we are the hope for the world, and I refuse to abandon that hope. And until I shake loose this mortal coil and we find out what's on the other side, I will never be the guy that does not stand up and fight for America because I love her.
It's not often that I get emotional listening to someone on this show. I'm glad, sir, you have a microphone. I'm glad you have 2. I'm glad that we get to hear your voice and your thoughts and your opinions on this. God certainly built you very specifically and with a heart for this country and what he intended it to be. And it is that very thing you just expressed. So I thank you for feeling that way. Thank you for fighting for our country and for all of that goodness in it for every single person, regardless of how he or she thinks or feels. And that's a remarkable trait. And you are a remarkable person. And I'm honored to know you. And I think this was by far one of my favorite episodes, my favorite conversations. And I hope that it is the first of many that you and I will be able to have. So I'm just so grateful to you for all the work that you're doing, that you're continuing to share. This is absolutely needed. And you are doing a great service, just in a little bit of a different way these days. So, Aaron, thank you for everything that you're doing. Thank you for everything that you've done and for coming on and chatting with me about all of it today.
Absolutely. Anytime. It's already a yes. You just hit me with that scheduling email. We'll make sure that we understand we're both on PST. We'll go from there.
There you go. As long as we know that, we already have a major challenge sorted out.
we after action that one, and we've got a good way forward.
Perfect.
We're both on PST. Great.
I love it. Well, thank you, sir. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Politically Basic. We remain committed to breaking down the basics so that you get to decide. Be sure to check us out at politicallybasic.com and follow us at Politically Basic so you don't miss an episode. And we look forward to seeing you next time.